What's up, math scholars and math haters? This is Mr. W. Today we're going to take one idea, not a test question, but just one math idea and talk about it. That idea is, as you can see, two-step equations. The idea of a two-step equation is that we have some variable, and instead of having one operation around it, like multiplying by 3 or something like that, we also see another operation like addition or subtraction. And then, of course, we know that that has to equal some number, which in this case, I'll make 14. Now, the process for solving two-step equations is very similar to the process for solving a one-step equation. Essentially, if we see an operation, like if I see plus 5, I know that I'm eventually going to have to subtract 5. And if I see 3 being multiplied by my variable, I know I'm eventually going to have to divide. But the big trick with two-step equations is figuring out what order to do all of this in. And I like to use this idea that I came up with called socks and shoes. The idea is that when you're getting up and you're getting ready for school or whatever in the morning, you put on your socks and then you put on your shoes. You put on what's inside first and then you put on what's outside. And then when you get home, you have to take them off in the opposite order. You have to get rid of your shoes first because they're further outside your socks, and then you can take off your socks. So if we take that as like an analogy or a metaphor and apply it here, essentially, I'm going to look for my number or coefficient or whatever that is furthest away from my variable, which in this case is my plus 5, and I'm going to say, okay, this is what I want to get rid of first. So I see plus 5, and I'm going to subtract 5. And of course, I'm going to do the same thing on both sides, minus 5 on the left, minus 5 on the right. So plus 5 and minus 5. The reason why I picked minus 5 is so that plus 5 and minus 5 could come out to equal 0. And I'm going to think of this as canceling those out. And now over here on the right side of the equal sign, 14 minus 5 is going to give me just 9. Now I know that this is equal to 3x, and I didn't touch 3x over here. I left that alone completely. So I'll just go ahead and rewrite it. So now I went from 3x plus 5 equals 14. I subtracted 5 from both sides of this equation, and I wound up with 3 times some number equals 9. Now, if you want to go back to fact families, or if you want to use the inverse operation and divide or whatever, you should end up with something like x equals 9 divided by 3, and 9 divided by 3 is going to give us a final answer of 3. So 3 is going to be our answer to this problem. Okay, and here is the second equation that we're going to have a quick look at. This one looks a bit different. We can see that we have x minus 8 inside some parentheses. That whole thing is being divided by 3, and we know that this whole expression on the left has to equal 4. So I'm going to start by just going ahead and figuring out which numbers are closest to and then furthest from my variable on the same side of the equal sign that it shares. So I see x minus 8, that's one expression, but then that whole thing is the numerator to a fraction with 3 as its denominator. So I'm going to say that I'm getting rid of 3 first. And in order to do that, I see that we are dividing by 3. So I'm going to say, okay, we need to multiply. I multiply by 3 on the left side, multiply by 3 on the right side. Now 3 divided by 3, that's also going to cancel out because 3 divided by 3, anything divided by itself is just going to equal 1. So those all go away. On the left side of this equation now, I still have x minus 8. I left that alone. But I know that that x minus 8 is equal to, and then 4 times 3 is 12. So now I have this down to just a one-step equation. What number minus 8 equals 12? Well, whether you use your inverse operations or your fact families, you should get some quick expression that tells you that 12 plus 8 equals x. And we could have gotten there from fact families by rearranging this or by using the inverse operation and saying if I see minus 8, I add 8. Add 8 here, minus 8 and plus 8 would have canceled. Either way, we get that x equals 12 plus 8, also known as 20. So 20 is going to be the answer to this equation. Okay, so here is our third equation that we're going to look at, and for my students, you will recognize this when you get your worksheet on this idea as question 1. I'm just going to go ahead and do it here, so that if you want to write it on paper or if you want to write it on the actual worksheet, you are, of course, welcome to do that. But anyway, we have 6 equals some number divided by 4 plus 2. All right, so I want to go ahead and look for my socks and my shoes. I want to look for what's closest to my variable and then furthest away. I'm going to say that this dividing by 4 is closest, and then this plus 2 is going to be furthest. So if I want to take off my shoes and then my socks, metaphorically speaking, I need to go ahead and get rid of this plus 2 first. So I will go ahead and do that. I see plus 2. I'm going to do the opposite of plus, which is minus. So minus 2, minus 2. Plus 2 and minus 2 are going to cancel each other out because plus 2 and minus 2 give us 0. 6 minus 2 is going to give me the new left side of this equation, which is 4. And I still know, because I left this part alone, that 4 equals this variable a divided by 4. And now if I want to get rid of dividing by, I just need to multiply. So I will times 4 and times 4. Times 4 and dividing by 4, just like plus 2 and minus 2, are going to cancel each other out because multiplying and dividing are inverse or opposite operations. And I'm left with a equals, and that's going to be 4 times 4. 4 times 4 gives me 16. So the answer to this equation, the answer to my variable, is going to be 16.